Welcome back, everyone, to our quick overview study guide of Luke 7. We start off this chapter with the centurion slave. I wanted to point out what the centurion said about, he said in other books about, I say come, and he says come, I say go, he goes, because he has people underneath him. And when Jesus heard this, he marveled at him and turned and said to the crowd that was following him, not even in Israel have I found such great faith. I thought that was pretty neat because he makes a claim, not even in Israel have I. And one has to wonder exactly where else he's been. Maybe even just for a little while he crossed into some other territory, but maybe he means something else. In terms of the main point, again, this theme of faith through all three Gospels I've been reading, this is the third one. Faith is the cornerstone of everything. It doesn't matter who you are. I mean, this person's a Gentile. He's not a Jew. But he has faith, more faith than all of Israel. Israel means basically all the Jews, all the land, all the Jews in the land, however you want to term it for this passage. I've not found such great faith. So anyone that can actually see, and that's what the centurion is doing. He can see something. He's like, I see it. I get it. He's able to expound and give Jesus an example of how he understands. And Jesus, of course, saves the person he wants to heal. Then we get into, again, we get into the city, but this is where he felt compassion of the son. I think that's what, the widow sees crowd. I ad-lib all this. I just jump right into it. I don't pre-read it. So this is where the lady lost her son. And again, this theme, like I was talking about before, was Jesus had healed this widow's son. Fear gripped them all, and they began glorifying God. They didn't glorify Jesus. They glorified God, because Jesus is showing the power of the coming kingdom on earth. He's showing them a visual show of what faith does in this kingdom. And Jesus is the mediator for this. And again, we go back to the Old Testament. We can go to, I think it was the Psalms, or there's a couple books, I can't remember, but they make this quotation where the fear is the beginning to understanding or wisdom. And here they were all, fear gripped them all, because, I get it. I get it now. And they glorified God. A great prophet has risen among us. Jesus was a prophet. And God has visited his people. God is not the prophet. God has visited his people. Okay? Glorifying God, acknowledging Christ as a great prophet, and God has visited his people. And of course, it went out all throughout the lands. Then we get into John, and he sent 2 of his disciples. So his ministry was still going on, but transferring over to Christ. John famously said, he must increase and I must decrease. John's time is basically, he plateaued. Jesus has the baton now. It's time for him to go away, basically, sadly. But here we see Jesus basically, they're asking him, are you the expected one? And they go and ask him, and he says, go report to John what you heard. And he gives some Old Testament references. He's like, look, I'm doing it. I'm preaching the gospel. The poor receive their sight. Blessed is the one who does not take offense at me. And then Jesus starts to speak about John. What did you go out in the wilderness to see? A reed shaking in the wind? Someone in soft clothing? No. A prophet? Yes. I say to you, and one who is more than a prophet. But yet he who is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he. So John came here to serve, just like Jesus. They're here to serve. Those who will be last will be first, and those who are first will be last, right? And it's the same thing here. And then the tax collectors, and they acknowledge God's justice. God's justice. Okay? These are really important words to pay attention to, because there's a lot of ideas out there that people draw, conclusions that people draw. It's God's kingdom, God's justice. Jesus is showing everyone. That's what his job was, to show everyone. God gave him the ability to do this. So Jesus is just borrowing the car, in a sense. But it's God's car. And then, of course, the Pharisees and lawyers reject God's purpose for themselves, not having been baptized by John. That's important. And then he says, what shall I compare to this generation? They start accusing him of having a demon. This is pretty self-explanatory. And here we get into it doesn't say who it is. A lot of people say this is Mary, but she has many sins. Okay. When the Pharisee who invited him to saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who and what sort of person this was who was touching him, that she is a sinner. And of course, Jesus answered, and gave the parable excuse me, of the two debtors, which one was better, more joyous. Okay. And then he says, for this reason, her sins, which are actually misses, her misses, which are many, have been alphiemi. You could say forgiven, but actually her sins are released from her, or cut off, or cast off. This is alphiemi. For she loved much, but he who is forgiven little loves little. Okay? Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Faith, again.